gratitude to the countless volunteers who began, nurtured, and sustained the religious education programming in this beloved community. I offer this litany of the paid professional religious educators who have served this congregation. Beverly Wilson, Paula Dilmuth, Ken and Tracy McLeod, Cindy Ross, Jessica Zabrine Gray, Beth Williams, and I am honored to add my name to the litany, Kathy Smith.
And our invocation, once Ed, who's working the whole sound booth, switches back over to the camera. Is the volume good? Our invocation, inspired our circle window. They drew a circle, shut me out, heretic, a rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle and took them in. I invite you to rise. Let's sing the hymn we sang the most when I was a Unitarian growing up. So welcome to the Unitarian Church of the Echo. So just so you all know, right before the service started, the whole soundboard decided to go dead, and so our poor sound booth volunteer has been feverishly trying to get everything back up to speed. My name is Nathan. I'm one of your ministers. Reverend Chris Long, your minister of congregational life, is taking, I think, his first Sunday off since he's been here for 6 weeks. Kathy Smith, your director of family ministry, is also trying to squeeze in the Sunday off. So it's just me and you, Lee, the only staff that are left. A few things for you to know. Next week, we're having a blood drive, and we are teaming up with is it Power Pump? Power Pump Girls. So this is a collaboration. Our goal is to get 1 million pounds of blood, I guess.
Why not?
Sure. So we're going to do 1 million. Yes. Also, for those of you in person, online, you can do this as well, I suppose. During middle hour, we have coffee available again. We do ask that you enjoy it in the sweltering misery of Louisiana summer, or at least close to a door to lower the transmission. Also, during middle hour, we have a branches drop-in group in room 6 if you've ever been wondering what branches would feel like or is like, or just want to have a chance to talk to some people in a really kind of well-structured environment. And also, Leslie, way in the back, is this the last Art with Leslie? Yeah, so if you've ever wanted to do art with a church member, Leslie, over in the summer of 2022, this is your last chance. So that is also available. And next week, we're going to have a bunch more really good stuff that are written on the boards out there. People online, you can see it online. But for anyone who has high school youth, we're going to do a not exactly lock-in that also includes a D&D game next weekend. So just keep an eye on that. And today we're going to transition right into the Stones, and I do have to name that Kevin Bourgeois is recovering well from surgery. So we're going to send a card to him. This ritual we have is open to everybody, visitor and member alike. We invite those who wish to come forward either along the east or the west wall, take a stone, place it in the chalice bowl. We now invite those who wish to come forward as we place stones. Say together, with hope to make this a better world, we light this flame. Its light is a symbol of the power of love. So some of you have asked, what is the point of church? I find the answer a little too reductive, but I still think it's an echoey good place to start. Is it too echoey for y'all? Okay, they're saying no, it sounds to me, but it may just be me. Online people, just, I don't know, let us know. The point of our church, and as reductive as it can be, and it's the title of this service, is to raise Unitarian Universalists. Now this means two different things. So first, it means anyone who joins this church, we need to give you the tools to be a Unitarian Universalist for your entire life, all the way up to and through your death. This means the good stuff, and the hard stuff, and the contradictory stuff, and even the boring stuff. But it also means giving our children and youth the tools to be lifelong Unitarian Universalists. And this one makes adults a little more squeamish, because many of us come out of religious trauma regardless of what church we were born into. Many of us understand what proselytizing feels like, what coercion into a specific belief could feel like. I'm willing to bet, remember there's no universal belief requirement in this church, but I'm willing to bet that most people here never want to bring a child into this faith with coercive intent. There's a sort of balance that has to be done in raising Unitarian Universalists. On one side of the scale, is giving people enough freedom so they can find their own religious path. And yes, that path does include no longer continuing in our faith. And on the other side of the scale, you have to have enough weight in this religion, enough trust, enough love, enough teaching, the teaching of it to give people the tools to stay Unitarian Universalists for their entire lives. Through our recent history, and more specifically, me growing up, we weighted very heavily on the go find your religion side of the scale, and very poorly at all on the this is your religion side of the scale. Does that make sense? The assumption of that everyone here has somehow converted into the faith rather than raised into it is something that goes as deep as one of the seminal texts we give people when they inquire about the church. It's called Our Chosen Faith. It's written by Forrest Church. Was a Unitarian Universalist minister. But I never chose this faith. I was raised Unitarian Universalist. This faith was chosen for me. And while I did choose not to leave, And I did have a point of a real disillusionment in my early 20s, which is a whole sermon for a different day. But I never chose it. In the title of our chosen faith, it leaves out those who didn't have the opportunity to choose it. And there is a fundamental different experience of being raised Unitarian, Universalist, or Unitarian Universalist than it is for those who chose this faith. It is not better, it is not worse, it is just different. Because more than 95% of the adults in this church chose this religion, many of you may not know the experience of growing up Unitarian Universalist. In fact, I bet for those of you who have parented now adult children, especially those of you who have raised them in this church, you probably know the sometimes painful realities of your children choosing not to be in this faith. So what I wanted to do today was to explore what it feels like to be raised in this church. So the best that I can figure, we have about 10 adults who are raised Unitarian Universalists who are members of this church. And I reached out to about 5 of them. Well, I reached out to a bunch of them, and about 5 said yes. And I asked them to record a story of what it felt like to be raised Unitarian Universalists. So what it meant for most of them is they just sat alone in their apartment with their phone, and I told them to just ramble and tell stories. And for 2 of the what I didn't count on when I got these videos in is that it would be more than an hour of content, and the content would all be incredibly rich and just wonderful to listen to. So I stayed up late into Friday night trying to edit these together. I'm toying with the idea of putting up the full videos, edited out the stuff that maybe they didn't mean to say, but the full video is up on YouTube later. We can discuss that if you want. So I reached out to someone from every decade of this church. So we have, the videos you're going to see are from Jaden Bryant. She is in college in New Orleans. She grew up here. You have Isabel Roundtree. She's in her late 20s, also grew up in this church, went to LSU. Abel Thompson is in his late 30s, I believe. He is now working in New Orleans as one of the organizers for Together New Orleans, and he is also your social justice chair. Then we have Melanie Borick, who was raised in the New Orleans church and then became a part of this church. She is the member of the congregational care team that when we were shut down, wrote every card to every person for more than a year until we put the card table back out. And then the last one is Beverly Wilson, who is in her 70s. She was raised in this church and was actually a religious educator in this church. What I did not expect was how much rich history she would tell. So I had to really figure out, how do I not cut all of the history, but also make it so we get out of here within an hour. One of the things that you need to know is in the 60s and 70s, there was this continental youth movement called Liberal Religious Youth, or LRY. They reference it in the videos, and the later version was something called YRUU, and then more recently the UUA has gotten rid of the continental youth programming and has not replaced it. Also, for Melanie and Beverly, I invited them into my office, and I plopped my phone down and hit record, and we even I just sort of interviewed them back and forth. They were doing construction, I don't know, here somewhere during it, so you'll hear me talking and you'll hear some hammering at some point. All right. As you go through the service today, I'll invite you to think about why this church matters to you. I'll invite you to think about what you're hoping for the future generations who are going to sit in the sanctuary. And I don't just mean children. I mean every person who has yet to walk through these doors. All right, Ed, you can go ahead and hit play. Do you want to say the thing you were going to say, and then I'll prompt you for questions?
Okay. Well, my name's Melanie Borick. For those of you that don't know me, I grew up in New Orleans, and I attended the First Unitarian Church of New Orleans when it was on Jefferson Avenue. Can we stop a minute?
Just keep going, yeah.
My name is Jaden Bryant. I am currently 21 years old, but I've been a part of the church since I was 3. So I definitely grew up coming every Sunday, coming to RE class. Religious education was really, really, really foundational for me. I really appreciate just getting the opportunity to learn so much and be encouraged to think and form my own opinions and not being shut down and then being supported later on. It really, really just built, I think, like a lot of very confident and, you know, kids that just were allowed to be free. I guess just happy. You know, I was very happy and coming to church. I never didn't want to come.
I'm Beverly Mangum Wilson, and I have been a Unitarian all of my life that is old enough to remember, because my dad started taking me to the Unitarian Church in Richmond, Virginia when I was 6 years old. We moved to Baton Rouge when I was 10. And so I have been a part of this fellowship and then this church on its journey for 68 years.
Hi, I'm Isabella Roundtree, and I was born in the New Orleans Unitarian Church and moved to the Baton Rouge Unitarian Church when I was 2.
I remember my first Sunday at the church. Must have been during Easter, and in the Sunday school class, they had given us little chicks to hold, and I thought that was so cool because I probably had never held a little chick being in the inner city like that.
But I remember many of the very early church buildings that we went to as we were sort of moving on the path of trying to begin to get to our own church, because we started off very, very small. In my Sunday schools, I don't remember ever more than 10 kids in my Sunday school class, which meant all of high school or all of middle school or all of elementary school. And when there are only 6 or 8 people and one of them's your brother, that doesn't really count.
So I enjoyed it when in Sunday school we got to delve into age-appropriate spiritual questions and topics like, what do you think God looks like as an elementary school kid? And we'd all draw a picture of something we thought God looked like.
Then we joined my sister and I joined the LRY, the Liberal Religious Youth, and that was a lot of fun. Our instructor was George, who had lived on a commune in New Orleans, and he introduced us to camping because we went camping in Waveland, and that was probably my first time that I slept in a tent, and that was kind of neat.
So we went from there to a Struma trade school out on North Acadian. And I remember being in all these big industrial rooms where they would build stuff, and we would have our Sunday school classes and stuff. And at that point, we were able to, I was a kid, we were able to save up some money, and we bought a building on Government Street, which was sort of almost downtown. And my brother and I both talk about remembering to help clean it up, to help paint it as kids. All the Sunday school kids, as well as the parents and everybody, took very much a feeling that the building belonged to us. And I remember playing on the fire escapes and all.
I just remember the good times that we had being I think the LRY was a pretty tight community of kids. And I remember their names. I don't know what happened to them. Sandy, Randy, and Graham were the 3 main people I associated with back then.
What'd y'all do?
We hung out. We went on those camping trips. We cleaned up Green Street. I think we even campaigned for a political person that belonged to the church. I don't think my mother was too happy about that. I think he was a communist. So.
I grew up going to Sunday school with my parents and going to St. Luke's Episcopal School during the week for elementary school and middle school. I got to experience 2 worlds of religion. I got UU service on Sundays, and I had Episcopalian service on Wednesdays. I definitely was the odd one out at my school. Most of the other kids also went to an Episcopalian church or another Christian denomination church on Sundays.
So just, the structure of the service, we're going to have 4 or 5 minute videos. That was the first of 4. We are going to share the offering this morning. So for those of you online, you can go to the link that's on the picture. There you go. And for those of you in person, you can still do those on the link, or you can put money in the bursars. We are sharing this entire month. I guess this is the last one. This is our last chance to get over $50,000 to Humanity Stamped. Last few months we've been at about 1,200. So among you, we probably are going to need about 49,000. So if you've got 49,000, I will encourage you to give very generously. 98,000 because we're splitting in half. So among the 50 of you gathered or whatever, we need $98,000. This morning's offering will now be generously given and received.
I definitely got questions about what is Unitarian Universalism from other kids. What do you believe in was really more how it went.
I think it was only when I was being questioned and I couldn't readily answer the other kids as to what I was feeling that I wished I was something else. I never really wanted to be any of the other religions for the religious answers.
And after the teacher read the book, we went around and had a conversation about, what our religions were and what our ethnicities were and all this. Now, mind you, this is a pretty homogenous group of kids. This is a private school in Baton Rouge, so this is a pretty homogenous group of kids. So there wasn't that much differences in ethnicities or cultures in this group. And the question got to religious beliefs. And I remember being kind of surprised that we're going around the circle and, all the kids are either, some denomination of Christianity or some denomination of Christian, and they all believe in God. So it gets to me, and of course I'm like, I don't think I believe in God, right? And the room just fell silent, like, oh my God, you heard gasps from the kids, like, how could he not believe in God? And I was just as surprised at them as like, how does everybody, I'm thinking the belief in God is like picking your favorite color, right? Like everybody has autonomy, and I didn't have the language of this as a kid, but it's like y'all don't have the autonomy to choose your own spiritual path at 7 years old, you know? But that's what growing up Unitarian gave me.
I probably didn't know I was at a different kind of church till we moved to Georgia when I was in 9th grade in a small town, and you were either Methodist or Baptist, period, in that town. So that was a rude awakening, because up until then, when I had gone to Newman, it didn't really make a difference, but that was a rude awakening.
Was saying that one of the hard things for me, and it sometimes still is how to verbalize to other people what my religious beliefs were. And I remember it particularly in high school, that the other students were virtually all Catholics. There were some Methodists and there were some other denominations, but they'd ask me that, and I would be trying to define, and I kept thinking as a kid, if only I were Catholic, I'd have all the answers and I'd know what to say to people when they ask. But other than that, I had no question about being a Unitarian. So
All around me at school, I saw people wearing little crosses, and I was confused, and I wanted something similar to that I could wear or have as a symbol of my religion. Early on, my parents got me a UU chalice necklace, and I've had a few since then, and I would wear that a lot.
So a few scattered stories from my past. Over and over in my school, I was asked what I believed, and when I told them, I was met, because this may shock you, but Slidell, Louisiana didn't have a huge Unitarian population, because we had one church that was about 70 members in Lacombe to spread out over all 5 of the North Shore cities. So over and over when I was asked, when I told them, I was met with some combination of confused disbelief, outright animosity, and every other variation of religious bullying you could imagine. Articulated among these 50 years of experience of being Unitarian Universalist or Unitarian Universalist, before and after merger, before and after integration, before and after all kinds of metrics, being on the moon and not being on the moon. The challenge of being a part of this religion is real in the world. And I bet this is something that is true for a lot of the adults here. How hard it is to describe what this church is. In fact, I've given my life to figuring out how to articulate it, and I still dodge the question sometimes in my day-to-day life. By the way, the answer is never to answer the question about what do you believe. The answer is what you experience, but that's another sermon. So, like I said, I grew up in the North Shore Unitarian Universalist Society. It was a small little UU church. I'm wearing the stole that my childhood minister, Reverend Jane Malden, gave me when I was ordained here. I remember a lot of my memories in that Sunday school. We were in a geodesic dome for some reason. I don't know why Lacombe had a lot of geodesic domes, but we worshiped in one of those, and they would invite me from time to time to do little readings or things. I remember once we were doing like a children's story, and the minister was trying to explain to us the difference between a Unitarian, which is a belief in one God, and a Trinitarian, which is a belief in 3 gods. She started trying to cut up an apple, and she kept dropping the pieces, and I don't know why, it's always stuck with me. I remember in 4th or 5th grade, when we would take the offering, the treasurer would let me go into the kitchenette and stamp all of the checks, because everyone wrote checks back in the day. I remember that there was one Sunday school teacher I was actually able to be at his memorial service as a minister. He knew I really liked, I guess, Seinfeld in junior high, so he bought a Seinfeld book, like his autobiography or book of jokes or something, and gave it to me. I went to a church retreat they had where I was convinced to be a vegetarian at that retreat, which is a different story for a different day. But also, I was learning to play piano, and I got my hands on my first pop music, sheet music, and this poor church listened to me plunk out the key, very poorly, the Beach Boys song Kokomo. The church was too small to have a sizable enough youth group to have. The precursor to OWL, which is our comprehensive sexuality education curriculum, is AYS, about your sexuality. I was the only youth at that church, so they couldn't have me do it alone. And at the time, I remember looking for a chalice necklace, and I couldn't find one because I wanted to identify myself in the community. And my mom found one that was being sold at the First Unitarian Church in New Orleans. And so we started bringing me to the youth group there, so my poor family would drive 30 minutes, 15 minutes to Lacombe, do church in the morning, 15 minutes back, and then an hour to youth group in New Orleans in the evening and back. So it was like, my dad, he did it. When I went to LSU to visit, the first thing I did when I was visiting a friend of mine in their dorm rooms was to look up in the phone book the Unitarian Church, and I called this church, and I listened to the answering machine message, which might have been the same one that I inherited when I took over. But it was something really comforting to know that there was a larger group of people who shared the same faith as me in this town. The other thing that was easily the most transformative experience of my life were the number of times as a high school student I was shoved into a van of between 1 and 15 other youth and driven to Houston or Austin or Dallas or Tulsa, where there would be gatherings of hundreds or dozens, about 100 to 150 Unitarian Universalist youth. In fact, you're going to hear later Beverly Wilson even mention a conference that I used to go to when she went 30 or 40 years earlier. It was at these gatherings where I heard my call to the ministry. It was where I met my now wife. It was where I found support that I've relied on for decades. It was the first time I did not feel religiously alone. In this church, we talk about the profound promise of universalism, this idea that there is nothing that puts you outside of God's love. But I genuinely experienced that growing up. To say it another way, the theological values that you espoused, both historically and now, I saw it manifested in a real and life-changing way among the other people that I was able to get to know. Because we didn't know any better, we didn't know to be cynics about the promises of this faith. We just knew that if you gathered around 100 people who were raised knowing that they were worthy of love, and that their own spiritual path was a part of the religious journey, and that doubt and reason made your faith stronger, and that we had an obligation to build a better world, then we might actually do it when we're together in community. I invite you to rise. Let's sing this next hymn. And sing out. Are we going to do part of it a cappella or no? I think so. We'll find out.
Change alive from me.
invite us into a moment of prayer and reflection. The God that we know and we see love and kindness and justice, that great mystery named and unnamed, whatever that is that holds us together, be with us on this day. And hold all of those who are worried, all those who are grieving, all those who know this upcoming week will hold some very painful anniversaries. All those who hold joy, all those who hold hope for a better world, all those who know that they are worthy. Help us to be beacons of hope and of love, and to know that no matter your struggle, you are held in the divine light. Amen.
In my adult years, I have really welcomed that challenge, and I'm still growing spiritually. I understand myself as not static, but always changing and evolving.
Let's see, and my sister remembers singing a lot. She remembers singing Kumbaya, but I don't remember singing that. I remember singing what we now sing every Sunday, the doxology. So that was sweet when we started singing that. It reminded me of my childhood.
What got me involved was I was actually suggested to go to this Youth of Color conference. It was in Bethesda, Maryland, or like the DC area. And it was for Youth of Color. So it was about 10 or 11 of us. And we stayed at a church in Bethesda. It was really, really great. We got free time to like explore. We got to learn a lot of different things and learn about like identity caucusing and everything, because it was for Youth of Color, and it was really great. And I was able to meet a lot of people, like people that I even like still talk to, even though this was like a pretty long time ago for me, I guess, because I'm 21. It was probably about 5 or 6 years ago or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, I guess it was 6 years ago. But it was definitely a great, great, great experience.
One of my fond memories of when I was in high school, and I think it was 16, but I won't swear to it. This is my memory, whether it's correct or not. But one summer they were having the Southwest Conference meeting, which they did every summer at the Lake Texoma in Oklahoma, which was the gathering of all Unitarians in the area. And so I went for the week conference, and it was just so awe-inspiring to see all of these Unitarians there. I'd never been around more than 20 or 30 adults and a dozen kids or so in the church. And so we spent the whole week singing songs, doing camp things, bonding as a group of other kids who were like me. And so it was really special to realize that other people thought and felt like I did.
And we lived on Danielle Street, which was walking distance to the church, actually. And my mother remembers hearing it that night when it happened. But I think I slept through it. But
Why was it bombed?
The church was bombed because we were integrated, I was told. So, I mean, I was just a kid, so I didn't know what was going on.
But we went from there to the old state capitol, and what I remember there is climbing up around the stained glass windows in the top, and sort of as kids being able to just sort of run wild as other things were going on. I know we had classes, but I don't really remember it. Probably of all the places, my clearest memory is when we went to the YWCO. And part of it is actual memory, part of it is shared memory with hearing the stories as well over the years. And that was that we had a small group. We met in their sort of living room area, And if you know, YWCO means Young Women's Christian Organization. It's not the YWCA. And I remember playing games in the yard. My brother remembers playing croquet there. We drank coffee from demi-tasse cups and ate little donut holes and just enjoyed each other's company. But I also remember, and it's more of a collective memory than me personally, but I remember that we always had interracial gatherings, and I was very comfortable with that. And I remember that there was one Sunday when a group of men came, and I don't remember what their actual name was. I always think of it as the Knights of the White Camellia. But they came, and very shortly after that, we were asked to leave the YWCO because they realized we were having integrated meetings at their church.
Because nothing is stationary in time. Time is ever flowing and ever changing, and so are we. And that is a beautiful concept. Rarely do you get that sort of concept in a church setting.
I ended up actually working for a couple of the General Assembly conferences, and throughout this whole process, the church was supporting me. It was really great. I really just had a great, honest, euphoric, I guess, experience in a lot of ways, just learning a lot of things and growing up and being supported in the church.
This faith is supposed to be a grounding when things are tough. And this Sunday marks two very auspicious anniversaries, and I don't want to push too hard on them because Lord knows we need a breather right now. But is Monday that marks the 17th anniversary of Katrina? And it also marks the 17th anniversary of Hurricane Ida. In 2005, I was working at a Unitarian Universalist church in Austin as a religious education director. And even as far away as Austin, we got displaced Unitarian Universalists. Now you have to understand, at the time, the first Unitarian Universalist church was the church that I knew. That was one of the ones that was flooded. That was a church that supported me through my high school years. And I knew that they were displaced. What gave me comfort was knowing that this church, the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge, was there. This church was able to act as support for New Orleans. It was healthy enough and robust enough to be a hub for that support. I wasn't here when it happened, so I can't tell you the deep levels of support within this congregation and among the four congregations. But I'll encourage you to ask each other for that. In 2006, I tried to bring a group of youth from Baton Rouge down to New Orleans to do some of the work. And I reached out to Sylvia Martinez, who I knew from when we were both doing youth leadership stuff. And I asked if we could collaborate with the youth from this church. And we did. We went and stayed at the New Orleans church. And one of the things that I remember is we went down to Bayou St. John to do some recovery. It was just one day. And the problem with all of the recovery is people were very distracted with trying to rebuild their houses and their lives, and invasive plants were starting to take over everywhere. So they asked a group of volunteers to go and remove all the invasive plants and put in native plants. And after a couple of hours, they brought in a brass band, and I don't know if they had crawfish or some food I couldn't eat, but like crawfish or oysters or something. And everyone left to go eat and kind of dance, except for the youth from this church. And they didn't stop until every single plant was uprooted and a native plant was planted. And I was so touched by that, I wrote a letter. I didn't know I was going to apply for the job 8 years later, but I wrote a letter to this church board complimenting the youth on it. And you can actually find it if you Google it, because y'all put it in your newsletter, and that exists somewhere on the internet. When I evacuated last year from Ida, I have not heard any Ida stories. Have you in day-to-day life? I think this was the most traumatizing storm that we've gone through in a long time, and it's almost completely been erased from narrative. So we decided to record the service here the day before it was going to come on Saturday. No, that was me just thinking. because we did it, me and you. We were shut down because of the Delta, the pandemic Delta, not the hurricane Delta that hit. We got to keep all our traumas in check. But so we recorded it a day early, and then right after we recorded, I hopped in the car with my family, and we started like a 12-hour trip to Dallas. My poor brother, who left from New Orleans, it was 24 hours to get from New Orleans to Houston. So, and then Sunday morning, as we waited for the storm to come, we played the service, because we could have the magic of YouTube. We didn't even know if we would have power here. And I remember very profoundly the number of people, because we knew the storm was going to hit that night, who put somewhere into the chat something at the end of the service, like, I hope you're all going to be okay. I hope to talk to you soon. It was one of the eeriest, most supportive things I've ever experienced. While I was stuck in Dallas without electricity, and remember, we didn't have gasoline at the time to get back, I started trying to figure out how to make a worship service for you the following Sunday. I reached out to colleagues to get help because I was just too tired to write a sermon. And more than 30 of them recorded blessings for us as a congregation. Some of them did that because they related this congregation to Katrina relief. One of them was the minister who served in New Orleans during Katrina. And she sent me this stole as a gift. I mean, she sent it to me, but I think it's a gift for this congregation. But it was given to her by the Arlington Street Church in Boston. And it's titled, Out of the Muck and Mire, Music Will Come Again. And so anyway, more than 30 different colleagues put together reflections for you to help you get through that Sunday. And then I needed a place, so I did not evacuate with my chalice. I'm sorry, I'm not as good a Unitarian as you may have thought. But I needed to have a liturgical space to record all of the elements, like the stones and the prayer and all of that. And I reached out to the First Unitarian Church of Dallas, and despite the fact that their building was under construction and I could not get more than 45 seconds of content in before they would start drilling on the building, they opened their doors to let me record your service in there. And I spent the better part of that week flipping between editing videos on my sad little laptop and the Entergy map to see if I had power yet. But I tell you all of this to share with you that we have built a network of religious people who will be here for each other, even though you don't know them and I don't know them and they don't know us. The ancestors in this church and in all of Unitarianism and Universalism and Unitarian Universalism, they built these networks so that all of us could be here today, so that New Orleans and Baton Rouge would be better than they were before the storms, so that Lake Charles will continue to not be ignored after their storms. Raising lifelong Unitarian Universalists isn't just about giving people the skills to live their individual lives. It's about building something much larger. So let's rise for this next hymn. And let's try and sing this one out. We've been doing this one all month.
We rise, humbly hearted rise, won't be divided rise, with spirits to guide us rise, in hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. Rise, all of the children rise, elders with wisdom rise, ancestors around us rise. In hope, in prayer, we find find ourselves here in hope, in prayer. We're right here in hope, in prayer. We find ourselves here in hope, in prayer. We're right here and we rise up from the wreckage, rise with tears and with courage, rise fighting for life, we rise in hope, in prayer. We find ourselves here in hope, in prayer. We're right here in hope, in prayer. We find ourselves here in hope, in prayer. We're right here and we rise, humbly hearted rise, won't be divided, rise, with spirits guide us, rise.
Brought up believing in Unitarian Universalism, and definitely believed that there was way more than just what was being taught in the Bible. And Unitarian Universalist Sunday School allowed me to begin to understand that there are many ways to believe in a higher power and to be a good person and to be in community and in spirit with other people.
And Paige Acree and my daddy and Mel Dagan and Charles Yost went together, and I don't know how, but they were in on the banking and whatever, and they bought the land and they waited a while. We didn't move on it immediately because they were thinking about how to build the building, one, that we could afford, and two, that we could expand, because our whole goal all those years was to be there, to be for other Unitarian Universalists. So,
But why did you stay with Unitarian?
It's the only thing that makes sense.
I completely believe that without Unitarian Universalism, I would have been very lost in the world.
When I moved to New Orleans, I had a conversation with a Methodist pastor, and I was telling him about, my spiritual history. And I told him that I found, I really got into mindfulness meditation practices, and the pastor said, so hey, but why didn't you just convert to Buddhism? And my answer was, I was proud to give my answer, and it was, well, the Unitarian Church allows me the space to be both. So that's my story.
but I have never dropped my membership. I have never dropped my paying the money, because I believe we need to pass this on to the next generation. That it's very important that we continue on this path.
Without that sort of validation that I was able to believe what I needed to and that was okay, I don't think I would be the person I am today.
I never had to unlearn religious teachings because we studied everything, so it just built upon everything that we've learned from the get-go. So it was very comfortable for me. I thought about trying to be something else, but there's really nothing else I could be.
I definitely just appreciate the welcoming attitude that was promoted, I feel like so grounded even today in the morals that I grew up with, which are very, very free, but also just responsible, you know, just you know, like I just feel like it's actually very, very grounding, and it's really great to also meet people who grew up with the same songs as you, and you know, kind of share in this tradition, because it's really great. Like, I really appreciate having grown up in the church and just all the things that I learned that, you know, I can't get those years back, really. So yeah, that's my story, I guess, about growing up. Thank you.
Because it was home. It felt right. I really feel an all-inclusiveness. I feel an all-inclusiveness that the Unitarian Church encompasses everything and everybody, and that there are many paths to feeling a part of the universe and the world. And I'll tell you truthfully, I was an art educator, and I've always felt that my art was my vehicle for passing my religion and my religious beliefs on. It was not instead of, it was sort of because of. In fact, on my office door, I had the little circle with a circle to shut you out, but I use the circle to pull everybody in. And it's just, and I still try to do that with students and with people, that love is the answer.
Yeah. So a few weeks ago, we had a consultant, Mark Ewart, come in. And he gave a report. We're trying to figure out what the status of the church is in terms of a more robust generosity plan. And so he talked to a whole number of people in this church. And one of the things that he saw, which I'll preach more on later, is right now he says that he saw a lot of people more focused on me and not me, Nathan, but I, rather than on we, what we are doing. And in other words, people seem more focused on what each of us individually needs or wants from this church, and there was less of an articulation of a desire for what is best for us in future generations or honoring past generations. And I probably think that's just where we are developmentally with this pandemic. In a few weeks, this church will be open again for a full year without interruption, with the exception of the winter when we did the in the element services out there. But when we shut down, you had a different senior minister, a different second minister, a different service times, different place to have coffee, a different use of technology and worship, different sermon structure. The list could go on and on. And it's perfectly okay to want a church to come into, to rest, a place to be comfortable, a sanctuary. It is okay to want your church. This church has always moved and changed. The difference is you were here to see it happen the other times. In times before, you weren't as exhausted or frustrated or working through whatever it is we're all working through right now. It's telling that I didn't tell any part of my, it's telling that I didn't have any part of the Ida story at all over the last year. In fact, when I started to write this, I started to cry because it was the first time I had kind of unpacked what we had gone through last year. We are a traumatized people, and we are a healing people, and we are a resilient people. I wanted you to hear these stories because I wanted you to think about how each of us, our own spiritual development, and our own values in the church, how it matters and how it really matters. And not in abstract ways, not in just what is preached or what is put on the sign or what protests we go to, but it matters how we talk to our families, how we talk to each other, how we talk to especially those family and friends who have fallen down an insurrection rabbit hole. It matters to the city and it matters to the state. It matters to every person who is hearing a message right now from what's going on in Livingston Parish, where they're trying to ban books that recognize the full humanness of some of us. It matters that this church is dedicated to giving women back access to the rights to their bodies, which we are absolutely dedicated to doing. What you are doing individually to build this faith stronger is we are sitting in a great space. I don't mean the building's fine, but I mean, we are sitting among a really gift of a religion. And it's great because you are here. And it is great because you are here together, and it is great because people have been here before and people will be here since. And it is great because we are still building capacity for those who have yet to come. So please, keep working on your spirit. Keep trying to heal all of the areas that we are broken. Keep practicing being kind, the kind of people building the world that we were all promised. You have no idea the lives you are saving just by being together and doing this work together. Amen. Let's sing one more time. Anniversaries are weird and they're hard. So go be really kind to yourselves this week. Be kind to other people. Go build a world a little better, a little stronger, a little more compassionate. Go love the hell out of this world. Amen. Go in peace.